With the NBA offseason about to get into full swing, I wanted to do one final video based off the 2024 regular season, and I'm going to be grading every team's 2024 season as a whole. This is going to take into account injuries. Obviously, that led to some disappointing seasons for some certain teams. Then obviously some teams exceeded expectations, which is going to result in a nice letter grade. And like always, if you agree or disagree with any of my selections or gradings, let me know in the comments below, and let me know how you would grade your favorite team's 2024 season, and let's get into it. So we're going to start things off with my New York Knicks. I'm going to give this season a B+ for them. Jalen Brunson emerged to being a top 10 player in the NBA this past season. The Nova Knicks were in full effect, but unfortunately injuries derailed this team's season from making it out of the second round once again. I obviously love the addition in OG Anunoby, and we didn't really get to see too much time with OG, with Randall and Brunson all out there on the floor at the same time. They resulted in the same playoff appearance as they did in 2023, another second round exit, so it's a B+. If they did make it to the conference finals, it would have been an A. For the Brooklyn Nets, I'm going to give you guys a D. This season really went nowhere. Mikal Bridges didn't emerge as a #1 option. Their pick ended up jumping into the top 4 into the draft lottery, and they don't even get it. That is going to Houston from the James Harden trade, and there's not a lot to get excited about in this Brooklyn Nets future right now. Derek Whitehead and Noah Clowney, their rookies didn't really show up too much. Cam Thomas did have a nice year. They could lose Nick Claxton, who had a solid year as well, so I'm going to give this season overall a D. The Boston Celtics are going to be the only A+ in this video for obvious reasons. They won the NBA Finals, and they also were the best team throughout the regular season and had a dominant playoff run as well. So pretty much from October to June, they were the best team in the NBA by a wide margin. Philadelphia 76ers always kind of knew this was going to be a transition year. I'm going to give it a B. They were a first round exit to the New York Knicks, but Joel Embiid was basically playing with one eye and on one knee. Tyrese Maxey emerged to being a 1B for this team, so that is a really big bright spot, and this was the last year of having Tobias Harris on the roster, so that's another good thing as well for Sixers fans. But unfortunately, just Embiid, another year not seeing the conference finals, and this could have been the year to do so. They definitely could have beat the Knicks. They definitely could have beaten the Indiana Pacers to make it to the conference finals, but unfortunately, they didn't do so. But with the Embiid injury, I'm going to give them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to give it a B. And for the Toronto Raptors, they finally are entering into somewhat of a rebuild. They traded away Pascal Siakam. They traded away OG Anunoby. Got solid returns for both those guys. More picks for Pascal Siakam, more so players for OG Anunoby, and they actually have a foundation going forward with Scotty Barnes, who just got a payday and had a great year 3, was an all-star. Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett both played really well in the second half with the Toronto Raptors, and same with Grady Dick in his rookie season as well. It is unfortunate they do not have the #8 overall pick in the draft from the Jakob Poeltl trade, but that happened back in 2023, so for 2024, it's a B+. The Indiana Pacers made it to the conference finals in year 3 of their rebuild. This team was picking in the top 10 in the 2022 draft and in the 2023 draft, and this year they made it to the NBA Eastern Conference Finals. They did get swept by the Boston Celtics, but it was a competitive sweep, and Tyrese Halliburton got hurt. He was phenomenal throughout the first half this year, and then in the playoffs, they went out, they traded for Pascal Siakam, who could be a nice #2 for this team. Guys like Andrew Nembhard, TJ McConnell, Ben Shepherd all showed up, and this team should be right back into the thick of things in 2025. So a really good season for the Pacers. It's an A. Milwaukee, definitely a little bit more on the disappointing side. I'm going to be giving this a C+. They went through 3 head coaches this year. They went through Adrian Griffin, their new head coach, to start off the year. They had the interim coach in Joe Prunty, who they probably should have just kept because they paid Doc Rivers all this money to not even improve this team over the second half of the year. They didn't really prioritize the development of the young guys like Andre Jackson or Marjon Beauchamp, and they were an obvious first-round exit to the Indiana Pacers. What makes this not a lower grade is because Giannis was hurt, Dame was banged up in round #1, so like the Sixers, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, but the first year with Damian Lillard and Giannis playing together and a new head coach that ended up getting fired halfway through the year, pretty disappointing. For Chicago, it's going to be similar to the Brooklyn grade. I'm giving you guys a D. Yeah, you could have been like Portland, you could have been like Washington and entered into a proper rebuild, but no, you just wanted to stay in purgatory, and that got you the 11th overall pick in this year's draft. They didn't move off any of their assets at the deadline either. They didn't trade DeRozan. They didn't trade Vucevic, Caruso, Levine at the time. None of those guys ended up getting dealt, and this team ended up with the 11th overall pick in the draft. Too good to get a top pick and too bad to really do anything in the playoffs. They're in purgatory. Hopefully that changes this offseason. And for the Detroit Pistons, yeah, it's going to be the only F in this video. I'm sorry, Pistons fans, but you basically added Cade Cunningham from the 2023 season where he was hurt, and you lost 5 more games. It's kind of crazy how how bad Monty Williams was with this team this season. It was just a flat out disappointment almost every single night for the Pistons when they went on that massive losing streak as well. I don't really think Jalen Duren progressed all that well. Same with Jaden Ivey. Asor Thompson had a rocky rookie season, and I just feel bad for Cade Cunningham, man. So yeah, the Pistons, I got to give you guys an F. For the Cleveland Cavaliers, I'm going to be giving you guys a B- for this season. Back in 2023, they kind of got upsetted by the New York Knicks in round number 1 when they were favorites to win that series. This year, they finally got a round 1 series under their belt, probably playing an inferior team to last year's Knicks squad in the 2024 Orlando Magic, but it was a fun, competitive series. It went to 7 games. Even with Jared Allen banged up, they were able to get it done, and then kind of got blown out in round number 2 by the Boston Celtics with plenty of injuries going in Cleveland's side of things. They had multiple injuries throughout the year as well to Darius Garland and Evan Mobley. We're going to expect some really big decisions from them this upcoming offseason, but it was an improvement from the 2023 year, so I'm going to be giving them a B-. For Charlotte, I'm going to be giving them a C+. This probably would have been around like the D+, C- area if they didn't trade away their veterans at the deadline. I love them moving on from PJ Washington, Terry Rozier, Gordon Hayward, getting some draft capital and injecting new life into this Hornets team. We're going to have a new ownership, new front office, new coaching staff. I think this is the year to start fresh in Charlotte, and Brandon Miller looked phenomenal in his rookie season. A lot to get excited about. But LaMelo was disappointing again because he got hurt. Same with Mark Williams, suffering injuries as well. And the Hornets were just flat out bad this year, but hey, that's fine. It's a different C+ than like what the Milwaukee Bucks got. I am fine with where the Hornets are headed right now. Man, the Atlanta Hawks were projected to be a top 6 team in the Eastern Conference this year, and they didn't even make the playoffs. They're going to end up with a C-. Trae Young was hurt. AJ Griffin's development definitely got stumped this year, barely played. The one bright spot was Jalen Johnson breaking out in year number 3. There's going to be talks all offseason about trading DeJounte Murray or trading Trae Young, and this team ended up losing in the first leg of the play-in tournament. It's definitely a C-. A lot of people thought this was going to be a playoff team in the East. The Miami Heat were in the 2023 NBA Finals, and 1 year later, they ended up being the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference and lost in 5 games to the Boston Celtics. That's going to net them a C+ here. They didn't go out and really make a big splash last offseason. They missed out on the Damian Lillard sweepstakes. They did trade for Terry Rozier this season, which I liked the deal at the time, and it didn't really cost too much to go out and get him. But Jimmy Butler got hurt in the play-in tournament, and they were banged up for their round 1 series against the Boston Celtics. And anytime you pretty much go from losing in the finals to a round 1 exit, that is going to hurt your letter grade. So I'm going to give them a C+ for their 2024 season. The Orlando Magic are going to get an A, man. They definitely exceeded expectations this year. They ended up going 47-35, finished as the 5 seed in the Eastern Conference. They were such a fun team throughout the regular season. Their defense stood out. Guys like Jalen Suggs, Paolo Banchero, Jonathan Isaac, Franz Wagner, Wendell Carter Jr. were all contributing on the defensive end of the floor. Paolo was an all-star this year in year number 2 and played great in the 7-game series against the Cavs, and just putting up a fight against Cleveland and showing life really earned them a great grade this season. Exceeded expectations, have a bright future. It's an A. And for the Washington Wizards, I'm actually going to give this season a B. They weren't expected to be good, and they weren't good. And we saw some bright spots out of Bilal Coulibaly and Denny Avdia and Corey Kispert. Kyle Kuzma didn't destroy his trade value. Obviously, the Jordan Poole experiment was terrible, and this team wasn't fun to watch, but they are finally entering this rebuild. And to be honest, I'd rather be where the Washington Wizards are right now than the Chicago Bulls or the Brooklyn Nets, even though they were 20 games better than the Wizards. So this was supposed to be a bad Wizards year. It's going to be the same thing next year. Just keep developing the young guys, and you can start to compete a competitive roster in 2026 and onward. For the LA Lakers, I'm going to give this a C+. They were in the conference finals in the 2023 season, and this year they lost in round 1 in 5 games to the Denver Nuggets. It was a somewhat competitive 5-game series, but as the Lakers, with LeBron getting up there in age, AD playing at the top of his game, and it was healthy once again, it's just disappointing to lose in round number 1 when you have 2 top 15 players in the NBA. For the Clippers, I'm going to give them a B-. It was just a weird year for them. They went out, they traded for James Harden in the beginning of the year, setting up a Kawhi, PG, and Harden big 3. They didn't play well with him right away, but then they were one of the better teams towards the end of the 2023 calendar year and the start of 2024. A lot of people thought that they could beat the Dallas Mavericks in round 1 in the playoffs. When they were the 4 seed, they won 51 games this year, but then Paul George was inconsistent, Harden was inconsistent, Kawhi Leonard got hurt once again. Disappointing on that front. So I'm going to give them a B- because injuries kind of derailed their season, as well as they at least try to improve this roster by going out and getting James Harden. For Golden State, it's going to be a D. They ended up beating the Sacramento Kings in round 1 in 2023. They followed it up this year with not even making the playoffs. They were a first leg exit in the play-in tournament. They ended up going 46-36. They were good in the second half of the year, but just boneheaded decisions by Draymond Green, inconsistent play by Klay Thompson, poor play by Andrew Wiggins. This team was really disappointing on all fronts, and I expect them to make a major move this offseason to try to compete one last time with Steph Curry in his career. For Sacramento, you were a 3 seed last year. You went to Game 7 against the Golden State Warriors, and you missed out on the playoffs. You lost to the Pelicans in the second leg of the play-in tournament, and they didn't even have Zion Williamson. You did win 46 games this year, but I'm going to give it a C. You didn't improve from last year. You didn't really improve this roster at all either. You're kind of in limbo right now. I also expect them to make a major move this offseason as well. It was a fine year. It was a good team, but you got to be better to make the playoffs in the Western Conference. And for Phoenix, I'm going to give you guys a C. You lost in the second round last year to the Denver Nuggets. This year, you followed it up. You traded a lot for Bradley Beal last offseason. You didn't really have a deep roster, but everybody was healthy for round 1 against the Minnesota Timberwolves, and you guys got swept. Yeah, that's not great with KD getting up there in age, Bradley Beal making supermax money, and you having no draft capital, no cap space, and no depth going forward. It's a really scary future for Phoenix if they don't do something noticeable this offseason. For Minnesota, the team that swept Phoenix in round number 1 and beat Denver in 7 games in round number 2, it is an A. They had high expectations this year, and they exceeded them. Rudy Gobert won DPOY. Anthony Edwards emerged to being a top 10 player in the NBA and was another playoff riser this season. Naz Reid won 6th Man of the Year. They just extended Chris Finch. This was overall a successful season for Minnesota, even though you lost in 5 to Dallas in the conference finals. It was a semi-competitive conference finals as well. It's definitely an A though. For Utah, I'll give you guys a B-. Once again, they missed out on the play-in tournament. They went 31-51. This team is definitely in limbo right now as well. Should they try to trade off of Lauri Markkanen and try to bottom out in the Western Conference and enter more into a rebuild? Because they're kind of in like a retool right now phase. I don't know if they're going to try to add this offseason or move on from some of their older guys and better guys right now. So yeah, for the Jazz, I'll give you guys a B-, but I would say it's more on the disappointing B- side. For Denver, I'll give you guys a B. I mean, you were 1 game away from going back to the conference finals, but for winning the NBA finals in 2023, your expectations were to repeat this year. It was finals or bust, and they didn't even make it to the conference finals. Everybody was healthy in game 7 against the Minnesota Timberwolves, and they blew a 20-point lead at home. It's still a good year. Like, you were a good team overall. You were basically 1 game away from getting the 1 seed in the Western Conference, but you lost to Wemby and the Spurs towards the end of the year. So you guys get a B, but they definitely have higher standards than that. Oklahoma City Thunder, you guys were the 1 seed this year with the youngest roster ever to do so. You guys are getting an A. This Thunder team was so much fun to watch this year, with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander finishing top 3 in MVP voting, Chet being the 2nd best rookie this year, J-Dub improving once again. The core was great. The young guys were great. The coaching was great. This Thunder team was overall amazing this year, and it was a fun round 2 exit against Dallas. They were competitive in most of those games in which they lost by 6. So it's an A. This team isn't going anywhere. For Portland, they're going to get a B. Pretty much the same criteria on why Washington got a B. They traded away Damian Lillard last offseason. They traded away Yusuf Nurkic. They finally entered into a proper rebuild. So even though they won 21 games and they were the worst team in the Western Conference, they were supposed to do so. And that's why I was hard on Detroit. They weren't supposed to be the worst team in the East, even though I predicted them to. So for Portland, you have a bright future. You just got to invest more time and be patient with Shaedon Sharpe and Scoot Henderson. They could also make some notable moves this offseason as well. For Dallas, you're getting an A. You were in the NBA Finals. I know it was a disappointing ending, losing in 5 games. A couple of those were non-competitive against the Boston Celtics, but you beat the LA Clippers. You beat the 1-seeded Oklahoma City Thunder, and you beat the Minnesota Timberwolves in 5 games, a team that beat the reigning champions Denver Nuggets in the series prior. Luka was a top 3 player this year. Kyrie was a great number 2 option. You went out and you made phenomenal moves, acquiring PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford. You were one of the best teams post-trade deadline, and there's no shame in losing into the NBA Finals. Only one team can say they do that. For Houston, it's an A-. This team is really knocking on the door for making the playoffs for the first time with this current core in the post-James Harden trade era. They went 41-41. They were a good defensive team under first-year coach for them in Ime Udoka. Alperen Şengün broke out this season. I thought I saw nice flashes from Cam Whitmore, Jabari Smith Jr., and Amen Thompson. The veterans played well. They have some some draft capital. They have plenty of trade assets and young guys on this team. They're going to be good going forward. For the Pelicans, I'm going to give them a C. I mean, you made the playoffs this year, which is great, and unfortunately, Zion Williamson was hurt in round number 1. They went 49-33. I thought point Zion was great, but just once again, I thought this team had higher expectations, and they really haven't done much in the post-Anthony Davis era, and they may just move on from Brandon Ingram this offseason as well. You can let me know if I'm being too harsh on New Orleans. For Memphis, I'm going to give you guys a C. I mean, overall record-wise, going 27-55 with this roster, it could be an F, but Ja was suspended and then got hurt for the year. Marcus Smart was hurt. Desmond Bane was hurt at times. Jaren Jackson Jr. was hurt at times. Steven Adams was hurt for the whole year. This team was by far the most injured team in the 2024 season, but you also got bright spots out of that as well. You saw G.G. Jackson and Vince Williams look like legit rotational pieces for you, so that's the bright spot to earn this a C grade. And lastly, the San Antonio Spurs, they were horrible this year. They were 22-60. They were one of the worst teams in the Western Conference, but I'm giving them a B+. They're still a rebuilding team, but Victor Wembanyama had one of the best rookie seasons of all time, and that alone gives us a B+, and is such a bright spot for this team's future, who could even be in the play-in tournament in 2025. So that's gonna be for me. I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, I would appreciate it if you drop a thumbs up. You guys will be getting my official free agency predictions out tomorrow, so make sure you are subscribed. And then tomorrow is the NBA draft, so make sure you're subscribed with post notifications on as well, because at 7:30 I will be live streaming on this channel for the draft for the full first round. And once again, thank you guys all for watching. I love y'all, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.